Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Pruitt, in August
Senator.
of 2016, the EPA Inspector General found that the EPA had failed to follow through with its commitment to update its 2010 life cycle analysis for corn ethanol, and has also failed to perform its legally required comprehensive study on the environmental effects of the RFS, the Renewable Fuel Standard. EPA's information on ethanol's life cycle emissions is inaccurate and it's outdated. Today's best available science shows that blending ethanol into gasoline can significantly reduce greenhouse gases. However, the EPA has failed to update its own science with most recent best science that is available and continues to rely on outdated, inaccurate science when setting national policy, regulatory biofuels policy. What are your thoughts on the EPA relying on outdated, inaccurate science to set federal regulatory policy?
Senator, I think it's the obligation of the EPA in taking steps, rulemaking and otherwise, to ensure that it has the most up-to-date, objective, scientific data possible.
Let me follow up a little bit. The current EPA process for considering the scientific information underpinning major regulations, I believe, is flawed and it's unbalanced. For example, the Scientific Advisory Board, or the SAB, is to provide scientific advice to the EPA administrator and Congress, but there is a significant lack of geographic diversity and state and local and tribal representation on the SAB. Can you explain to us what your views are on the agency science and what you envision as the role of agency science at the EPA?
Senator, as you and I talked about in our meeting, I think it's important to have that geographical representation better represented, and that there's some conflicts of interest application with the Science Advisory Board that need to be addressed as well, and also with the Clean Air Science Advisory Committee, which is a standing committee of the Science Advisory Board.
I've got a chart that shows the geographic makeup of the 2015 chartered SAB. Of the 54 members, the majority of them come from East or West Coast states. Can you get that chart for me, please? I've also got a chart that shows the number of states that have government representatives on the SAB. How would you broaden the geographic scope of SAB members to make certain that states and various governmental entities are represented? The one on the left shows the lack of diversity with regard to the actual members on the board. And the one on the right actually shows that we have a grand total of 2 states with representation for state and local units of government on those boards.
Senator, if confirmed, it is an issue, as I've indicated, and we talked about in your office, that it's important to address to ensure that there's confidence that as science is driving rulemaking, that it's objective and that it's tethered to the rules that are adopted by the EPA. So this is a very important issue that needs to be evaluated and discussed, and to ensure the efficacy of the science that occurs at the EPA.
Would you commit to us that you would make it an effort to see that the Science Advisory Board actually reflects some fairness with regard to geographic diversity, as well as recognizing the important role that local and regional governments, state and local governments have in determining or at least participating in these boards and commissions?
If confirmed, I look forward to working with you on that issue.
Thank you. Let me finish real quickly with just one other item. And we've listened a lot to whether you're working on behalf of industries, whether you're working on behalf of the folks from Oklahoma, your role as an administrator with regard to clean air, water, and so forth. As the Attorney General, you represented the interests of your state, both your state's economy and your state's environment. But just because you are pro-economic development and pro-economic development growth, does not mean that you have to be anti-environment. Preserving the environment and preserving the economy, I don't believe, are mutually exclusive. I don't think you've got to choose between the two. How would you balance economic growth with making certain that we have clean air and clean water?
Well, I think part of it's inherent in the statutes and the process that the EPA is supposed to conduct. I know that sometimes rulemaking is seen as something that's not terribly important or something laborious, but the reason rulemaking, the reason Congress has said that you offer notice on a proposed rule and you take comment is it's needed to make sure all voices are heard and that there's an informed decision that regulators are making before they finalize rules, because of the impact that it has on the economy and on the environment in this instance. So rulemaking is something that we should take seriously, and that we should do so consistent with the framework outlined by Congress, so that all those voices are heard that you're referring to, Senator, in the rulemaking process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.